As you know, we've been looking into what is really a disaster of our borders in South Africa. eNCA has been looking into the issue of safety around the country's borders as well for the residents that do live in South Africa. Efforts from government to strengthen the entry points are underway, but they should have been underway a long time ago. They also seem to be falling flat, and we have a multiplicity of reasons for that, it seems. Earlier in the year, the United Nations heard the warnings of the growing threat of terrorism in South Africa. So now things are getting very serious. So just how seriously should we be taking a threat of terrorism in our country, because it is so easy to get through our borders? Martin Iwi, Regional Organised Crime Observatory Coordinator for Southern Africa at the Institute for State Security, joining us this afternoon. It's quite a title, Martin. Good to have you with us. I appreciate your time. It's all good and well to talk about the border and people just walking across and living here as illegal immigrants. The moment we mention terrorism, I think this gets a lot more serious. How concerned are you? How concerned should we be? Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to your viewers. Yes, when we talk about border porosity and we're talking about illegal migration and other petty crimes and so on across the borders, that to some extent does not raise immediate eyebrows. But the moment we hear terrorism, then our heads begin to stand because terrorism is a completely different ballgame. Now, if our borders are porous and there is terrorism across the border, that's something of a big concern that we should be worried about. Now, yes, there is terrorism in Mozambique, and South Africa is bordering Mozambique. And therefore, is South Africa at risk of this terrorism? And where are the possible entry point that these terrorists can get into this country? Now, we know very well that the risk of terrorism is a risk that every single country faces today. So South Africa is not alone in it. It's a risk that South Africa is quite aware of, and the government has been taking all the measures necessary to make sure that the country is protected against it. And one of the measures so far has been the strengthening of borders across South Africa, which we all know that has gone through so many stages of various attempts, to bring security to South Africa's borders, given the fact that the country has suffered for some time with illegal migration, people coming from different countries and entering the country illegally. That to some extent has been slowed, and I believe that the measures that have been taken so far, especially the establishment of the Border Management Authority, which was launched in April this year, for me, it's a step in the right direction, particularly the centralization of border control in South Africa, because we've seen before that a major weakness of South Africa's borders was actually the coordination of these institutions. 22 government departments were involved at some point in management of South Africa's borders. And so therefore, the critical problem that we had before was actually the coordination of these institutions, speaking to each other, particularly in a timely manner to be able to intercept and disrupt criminal elements trying to get into this country.
Martin, I want to ask you this very quickly, because you've raised so many good points now. I feel like you and I might be having this conversation and taking this conversation forward another day as well. Do we know of any terrorism threats that have been stopped coming into South Africa as a result of these borders? As you say, northern Mozambique, it is one of our neighbours, not terribly far from us. For someone who works in this sector, has there been an issue in the past that maybe we were not made aware of, where the border actually did do its job?
We have seen in many cases where drugs, either from Mozambique or from South Africa heading to Mozambique, have been stopped. There's so many countless incidents of this situation. But the question that you are referring to is whether terrorists per se have been stopped along the borders. We don't have enough statistics to be able to make an authoritative statement on that, but we know that several individuals with questionable integrity have been stopped. Now, when we look at the airport of South Africa, we know that there have been individuals that we believe have terrorist background. For example, there have been individuals believed to be expert in explosives with some terrorist groups that have been stopped at the airport from entering South Africa. We've had individuals who we believe may have links with terrorists that have been stopped from entering South Africa, mainly at the airport. And these are incidents that we can really count on. But when it comes to the land borders, we don't have the exact statistics of how many terrorist elements have been stopped.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts as well, Martin. If you compare our land borders, let's compare directly north of us. Let's go with Mozambique, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Namibia as well. What are their northern borders for their northern neighbours look like compared to ours? Or what I'm asking, I think, rather badly, rather clumsily, is are our borders better or worse than our neighbours?
No, I won't say so. We've done a study. It wasn't a study specifically on borders, but we did a study on vehicle theft, in which we visited some of these borders, especially between South Africa and Mozambique. And what we realized was that if there was any challenge on the South African side, it was mainly a challenge of coordination. When we talked to some of the border authorities at the time, they complain. For example, the police will say they are not speaking to the soldiers. They don't even know where the soldiers are being deployed, but they know that soldiers have been deployed, and vice versa. So you talk to people from the South African Revenue Service, they will tell you they are not talking to these people, or even when they talk, it's not the same. When we talked to many of them, the problem was really coordination at the operational level, because when it comes to the strategic level, yes, there was some sort of cooperation at the interdepartmental level where head of department were cooperating, but that cooperation was not trickling down to the operational level. That was the main challenge that we found on the side of South Africa.
Yeah. Martin, this is fascinating. I really hope you and I get to talk again. You've opened up so many cans of worms for us to try and unpack this. It's wonderful to hear from you. Hopefully we do make a time to get you back on one of the shows, gain some wonderful insight from an expert this afternoon, taking a look, and this is why it's so fascinating, looking at the actual physical borders and what does it mean when it comes to something like terrorism in South Africa. It's one thing to have illegal immigrants coming in. Of course, it's an issue. It's quite something else when we talk about terrorism in South Africa. I'm going to say goodbye for today. We're heading